welcome to the CCNA Masterclass. Today we are going to do the introduction to Cisco IOS Command Line Interface. When we talk of the Cisco, the iOS is just the image, like the image we see, like the operating system in Windows computers, like the OS in Mac OS. So the Cisco iOS is just like the Windows operating system. It's just like the Mac OS operating system. So this operating system, Cisco calls it the iOS operating system, running within the router, the switches, and the firewall. This operating system runs within these network devices. So when we say the CLI, is the interface, the command line interface. So now, when we say the command line interface, one thing you need to know, we need to know how to connect to the Cisco device. You need to know how to connect to the Cisco device, because now connecting to the Cisco device, one, as you guys can see, you can see this is a switch. This switch have some ports, but with this interface, you need to know the console interface within the switch, because now you want to have access to the CLI for you to do some configuration. But you cannot just go straight to the CLI without connecting. The first thing, you already have the network device, which is a switch, a router, a firewall. Then your next point as engineer, you need to locate the console. Within this switch, we have two consoles. We can see the RJ45 console, and we can see the USB Mini B here. But we are going to use this RJ45 console port, though we are going to use a physical switch to do our own CLI, because I want you guys to feel the CLI with a physical switch after these slides. So now this is the console port. Now you now know how to locate the console port. On the back of every switch you will see a console port. This is the console port. So now with this console port, you need to connect this console port with a cable, which is a rollover cable. This cable you are seeing, this is a rollover cable here. This cable is a rollover cable. You need to take this cable, the RJ45 connector side, and connect it to this cable, to this port. You need to connect it to this port. When you connect it to this port, now take note. This interface you are seeing here, this is a DV9 interface. This interface, well, our PCs today don't use DV9 interface. So with this USB cable, that's why you need to buy two cables. This DV9 cable, which the end side is with RJ45 connector, with another cable, USB cable, to use through this console. You can use this side, connect it. This is the female and this is the male port. Connect this male port to this male port, screw the two screws. Now, your next step, you need to use now this USB side, need to connect to your switch, to your PC, your computer. Whilst this RJ45 connector now, you need to connect it into the switch or into the console port. You can see the same port, the color of this cable. You can see this is the same color cable around the console port. They will just want you to know that with this color, you can connect it through this particular port. So now, when you connect this to this port, you have your USB male to connect it to this DVI9. So when you interconnect this now, you can use this USB to your PC, and this RJ45 connector, you connect it here. Now your next step is you need a terminal emulator to have access to the network device, the router, the switch, the firewall. After connecting these cables in your PC, you need to download a terminal emulator. There is an open source which we call the PuTTY. If you go to putty.org, you can download this emulator for free. When you open this this emulator in your PC, what you need to do, take note, you can see here COM1. In some PC, the COM port is different. You need to right click on your computer management, then go to the port, check your console port. So from there now, you can click open. The terminal will open where you can have access to that particular device. What will happen? The Cisco IOS will open here. You can see, meaning the device is now booting up. When it's finished booting, you can see by default, if there is no configuration in that particular device, either a router, a switches, a firewall, you could just see router, something like this. After this screen have shown, your next step is you are now, the screen have just displayed. Now you see something like this router. Now when the router have displayed, two things we need to be aware of now as it stands for just now. You need to know how the user exec mode and the privilege exec mode operates. In the beginning, you will see router with this greater than sign symbol. With this greater than sign symbol, this tells you that you are in user mode or user exec mode. You can see the arrow I point here to indicate this. With this arrow you are seeing, with this pointer you are seeing this greater than sign. This tells you that you are in the user exec mode. You can see the host name of the device here, which is router, because by default, if you just buy any network device, you can see it, either it is a router or a switch or a firewall by default. You as engineer, you need to change this. But what will happen here, when we move from the user mode now to another mode, we just entering this command. Like when we enter now this command in user mode, enable, this enable command, you can see that the prompt have changed to pound or number sign. This will indicate, telling you that now you are in a different mode. This mode is the privilege exec mode. The difference you need to know about these two modes. When you are in the user mode, within this user mode, you don't have too much power to configure, to troubleshoot. You don't have any power to troubleshoot within this mode. This is just the user mode. Just few commands is being allowed here. So the user mode don't have too much commands. You don't have too much power to do a lot of configuration within this. This is just a user, just an interface mode configuration. But when you move from this user mode to enable mode now, take note, after typing this word enable, then you press enter. What happened? You are now switched from the user mode here, the greater than sign symbol, to a pound. This tells you that you now have more privilege. By default, you have up to you are in privilege 15 mode. You have a lot of privilege here. You have a lot of commands you can execute here. Like, let's say for an example, you want to know the running config, the configuration within that particular within this router, within this mode. You can able to know the type of configuration maybe someone have already done within that particular device within this mode. Let's say you just want to change the time of the device. Within this mode, you can do all that. So you see, the user mode and the privilege mode, there's more differences. So we can always move from the user mode straight to the privilege mode because we want to have more power. But not just this mode. We have other modes like the global configuration modes, the interface mode. We have different modes. But as it stands now, I want you just to grab this concept that for now, we have what we call the user mode with a greater than sign, and we have the privilege mode with the pound sign. The differences between these two, when I'm in the user mode, I don't have too much privilege. I cannot able to do too much commands here. I need to migrate from this mode to the privilege mode. Within this mode now, I can able to execute some command, not that much command. So we move to the other mode. So this is just fine. This slides will show you just some of the commands. Now using, like, if you are in the user mode, if you are in the user mode now, you can see when we use question mark at the router, what happened? You just see few lines. You can just see few lines. But when we use the same question mark to see the amount of commands we have within this privilege mode, you can now see the differences. You can now see that even this, the privilege mode, is even doubling this, the user mode. These are just some slight differences that you need to be aware of. That the user mode, just 2-3 lines, while in the privilege mode, I have more commands to execute within this mode. Notwithstanding, we have other modes, like the global configuration mode. You can see within the global configuration mode, now from enable, we move from enable, you can see the sign. From the greater than sign, we move to the pound. Now from the pound, because we want to go to global configuration mode where we have more powers to execute, to control, to configure the router or any other network device, you need to execute this command, config terminal. As you can see, we can now see that if we execute this command, definitely it will give us more power to execute. Okay, guys, as you can see from the slide, from what I have shown you in the slide, now I want to physically show you these things and explain once more. I don't know if you guys can see this clearly. This, are you guys seeing this cable?
Yes, yes.
You are seeing it, right?
So we can see.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Perfect.
We can see.
So this, every network engineer, one thing you need to know, please guys, try to do your best and have access to some of these tools. This is the cable I was talking about. This is the console cable. This is the DV9 connector here, and this is the RJ45 connector side of the cable. So you need to, this is a rollover cable. So but when you go to the market, you can say I want a console cable. Now from what you have seen in the screen, you can definitely know that yes, when I go to the market, I can able to buy now a console cable to have access to a Cisco switch, to a Cisco router, a firewall, or to configure any other device, because we have different other vendors outside there, like the Juniper, the Power Alto. They are all vendors. They all have console ports. So you need to have this cable to have access to that particular console port. This is the cable. We need to connect this cable. But before we connect this cable, now we cannot, with just that cable, we cannot able to configure the network device. We need what we call a USB cable also. This is a USB cable. Are you seeing the USB cable?
Yes, sir.
With this USB cable now, we can use this male port. This is the male port. This male port we will use this male port to fix it to this female port. You see, I have just connected the two cables together. This is how you connect the two cables. You need to interconnect these two cables inside. Now, after connecting these two cables, now you can able to use this side of this cable to connect it to the device, the network device you want to configure. After that, now you can use this USB cable to connect it to your computer. Let me show you the router we are going to use for today. This is the router. I think in our previous session I explained about this router. This is the router. So with this router now, you can see, if you watch closely, you can see that this is the console cable. In most routers, are you guys seeing this port here? You see?
Can we please know the route case?
The 1900 series. This is 1921 router, Cisco router. We have just connected it to the console port. I'm going to connect this cable to my PC. Your next step is to use PuTTY. Now, before we open the terminal, which is PuTTY, always first go to your PC, right click for you to know your COM ports. In most cases, a lot of people experience this. You will connect everything at the end. What happened? The person cannot have access to the CLI because of the COM port is different. So now from here, when you click your computer management, you click device. After clicking device, you can see ports. This here, ports. You can see COM. This is your COM port. You need to know your COM port. Here, my COM port say I'm using COM 4. So with USB serial COM 4, that's my COM port. So from that COM port now, I can open PuTTY. This is the PuTTY. After opening the PuTTY, your next step is serial. You are using serial cable. You click on serial cable. You can see by default, in most PuTTY, it comes with open with COM 1. You need to backspace the 1 and click and type 4 because my COM is COM 4. So now I can click open. The router is now booting up. It's like 1 minute, 2 minute time. After that, you can see. If you see now, it's even telling us press return to get started because we just boot the router itself. Default name is router, but with the router you can see this greater than symbol. This symbol tells you that you are in the user exec mode. Within this mode now, you don't have too much commands to offer here. Now, if you just type the question mark here, you can see with just this question mark, we type the commands you can leverage. You can see the commands you can leverage within this particular user mode. Let's say you want to move from this mode, this user mode now to privilege mode. With this EN and press the tab key, it can complete because we are searching for the word enable. With this word enable, this can take us from this mode, from the user mode to the privilege mode. Enter. Now you can see we have just switched to another mode, which is the privilege exec mode. Now you can see with this command EN, now we press the tab key. You press the tab key, it can complete it. But at the same time, let's say we still want to be in the exec mode. We still want to be in the user mode. You can still be in the user mode if you type EN. If you type EN and press enter, you see, just with the word EN without completing the enable, it can still take you from the user mode to the privilege mode. If we type E and press enter, when we type E and press enter, it says what? Ambiguous command. It says ambiguous command because why? Now, meaning this is telling if you experience this, let's say you just type E without using the EN or without using the enable, the full command, and press enter, and it tells you ambiguous command. This is telling you that there is more commands that start with E. So meaning you need to add one more letter or 3 for you to execute that particular command you want. This E that show the ambiguous command telling you that there is more than one word. Let's find out. It said it says ambiguous. So now just type the E. If you type the E and use the question mark, you see, now we have typed the E and we use the question mark because it's telling us ambiguous. Yes, you can see with the E, we have letters that start with E. We can see enable you can see Ethernet, we can see exit. That's why the prompt tells us that this command you just enter, which is the E, it is ambiguous. There is more than one word starting with E. So you need to take note of that. So now we move. Now we said, let's complete it to EN. With EN now, that's how the other kits, like the shortcut method, you don't want to complete the enable, but you have two ways. You can type the EN, press the tab key, it can complete it, and press what? Enter. Now take note, within this enter now, what happened within this? We have, within this mode, we have more powers, we have more privilege. Now you want to see the type of privilege you have within this mode. What you need to do, press your question mark. Shift, I press my shift key in my keyboard, press the question mark. You see, under the, take note, this is the pound sign we are seeing here. This pound sign indicates that you are in the privilege exec mode. This arrow greater than sign shows that you are in user mode. So now we have moved from user to privilege, which is this pound or number sign. So now with just this command, this is telling us that you see, you can see a list of commands. Access enable, access profile, access just this mode. So now, you see, I'm pressing, as you press spacebar, it shows more, enable, echo, erase. You want to erase the router just within this mode. Now if I press, you see, I'm pressing the spacebar. This, you can see a lot. You only need to obey. You only need to do some commands, do some labs. After doing some lab, definitely you only need to be aware that if I want to execute this command, I can able to use it. The command is there. I can able to execute it in the privilege mode or the user mode. You only need to be aware of this. Cisco don't want us to cram these commands. But if you do a lot of practice, a lot of labs with just using Cisco Packet Tracer, you can offer with, let's say, 80% of these commands. You can leverage them. So now let's say, for an example now, we measure another mode, which is the global configuration mode. So now let's say, with global configuration mode, now we want to move from this mode to global configuration mode. We have what you can type config with config terminal. This command, with this command now, we can able to use this config terminal to go to a global configuration mode. If you press enter, take note. If you are watching, take note. You can now see that in the router here we see this pound sign. After executing this config terminal, now we can now see router config. Now we see the number sign. First, we are not seeing any here. If you check here, if you can see this, this thing I'm highlighting, we only see router with the number sign. But after configuring, after using this command, config terminal, what happened? Now we have moved from the privilege exec mode to configuration, global configuration mode. Now you can see with this global configuration mode now, the difference is that you can see this bracket, config, telling you that you are now in a global configuration mode with this sign. So now let's say you don't want to type this configure terminal. You can use this, you can just abbreviate this. You know, we like shortcuts. You can just abbreviate this CO config T. With just this command, config T, you press enter. Let's say for an example, let's exit from this, from the global configuration mode. You see, we have just exit from the global configuration mode with the word, with this exit. You will know all this. With this exit word, exit, we have exit from this global configuration, from the global configuration mode to, we have now moved up, one more step up to what? To the privilege mode, just the router and the number sign. But now we don't want to use the full length. This full length, the full length configure terminal. We just want to abbreviate it. If we use now config, C-O-N-F, config T. If you just use this word, config T, and press enter, it will take you to global configuration mode. You need to be aware how to switch between modes. Now we have just switched to. Now let's say we want to move back to the user mode. If we want to go back to the user mode, we have few commands. One, if you type, now if we type END, end will only take you one more step back. It will take you what? To this, which is the number, the privilege mode. So now let's go back. Let's go back to the global configuration mode. Now the global configuration mode this time around, I didn't type it. I just want, because the Cisco iOS have this quality. It have that command history. Let's say for an example, I have just backspaced this. But now I don't want to type it. I only want to have access to my previous command. Now if I click the arrow key, the upper arrow, you see, it will take me to the config terminal. Now if I click the down arrow, it will give me the last command I use. Up, down, up, down. You see? So now I press enter. When I press enter, now it have taken me to global configuration mode back. But now I just don't want to go to the exit mode. I want it to take me more further to the user mode. In most cases, if you type exit once, you type another exit 2. You see, guys, now it have taken us back to the router console 0 to the top, telling you that press to return to the startup. So now you see, after pressing, we are now in the, we have just repeating exit twice. It have taken us back to the user mode. So you need to know how to manipulate, how to switch between these modes. From enable now, let's say what? From this enable mode now, we say what? So now we want to go to the global configuration. We say config T. You see? So now we are now in configure terminal. Let's say we want to create password for this router. After this device boots, you can see we are having access to the router without any password. So now we need to create password for this router. So now let's move from the enable the user. From the user we go to the privilege. You need to move to global configuration mode. So now we say config T. With this config T now, you say enable. You see, I have typed enable. Take note, we want to create password and enable password for when someone wants to have access to the device. Let the device prompt for a password. So now enable, we say password. The name of the password, let's say CCNA. Our password is CCNA. Take note, this is case sensitive. If you type all caps, when entering, you need to enter capital. It is case sensitive. So now press enter. Now you can see within, when we want to create this password, we create it in the global configuration mode. Only within this mode you can able to create a password. Now our password is enable password. The command to create a password, you need to enter this command, enable password. After creating this enable password, now you can create the password you want. Now we say our password is CCNA. So now we want to test this password, if this password is working. To test this password, to verify this password, we need to move to user mode. We need to exit to see if this password is working. We say another exit. You see? Now we have exit. So this is just like you have just connected the console through your router. Now the router have boot. If we press enter now, it will tell us what? To move to enable. Take note, we created an enable password. So meaning, if we type enable now, which is this, press enter, the device now is asking us for password. We can no longer have access to the device until we enter the password we created for the device. So now let's say, for an example, if we type now CCNA, take note, while typing it, you cannot see, when you are typing the password, you cannot see it because Cisco is trying to prevent, at least, let someone don't stand in your back trying to see what you are typing. You understand? Then, in just few seconds, because we delay to press enter, what happened? It's expired. So now let's try to type it again. CCNA. Now we have pressed it, you see? Now we have access to the privilege mode. So now we can go to config. We can go to config terminal. You see? Now we are now having access to this particular switch. So now let's say, for an example, we have exit. Let's exit. Now, if we move from this enable, now let's say we type the wrong password 3 times. It will tell you bad password. In some cases, it will tell you bad secret. You understand? So now, this tells us that if you enter the password 3 times, it will tell you bad password. So now let's move to the enable state. Now let's enter the correct password again. You see? Now we have moved to the privilege mode. So you need to know all these things. First, you create password. So now with this password, what we need to do? Now let's say we want to change. We want to change this router name. The router name, because you just say router. You want to change this router. Take note, when you want to do some configuration, internal configuration, you need to move to the global configuration, config T. So as from now, we will be using this config T, config terminal. You can complete it with the tab key, or you can just abbreviate it like this. So now press enter. Now from here now, we want to change this host, the host name, this router. Now let's say we want to make it, let it be Himratech. Now if we said, you can type H or the command host. We just hit O. Now I've just pressed what we call, you just press the tab key. When I press the tab key, the command will complete. Host. Now it's asking me the host name. Let's say Himratech. Himratech. Now, after pressing enter, what happened? You can now see. Now we have changed from router to Himratech. You see? Now we have changed the router name to Himratech. Take note, and enable host name changing. All this happen within the global configuration mode. So as IT, we need to be aware of this. So now let's see. Now we have created host name, which is Himratech. Now you want to, after creating this, you want to know, you want to see the running config. The running config, the running operation, the configuration you have done within this particular device. Let's say, for an example, you have 2 methods to see the running config, the running configuration, the things you have configured within a router or a switch or within any network device. You have 2 methods. Take note, with this method now, we have just what? We are now in the global configuration mode. So now let's say, for an example, if we press enter, if we press end when you press N will take you to the privilege exit mode. But if you press exit twice, it will take you to the user mode. So now we just within this privilege mode, privilege exit mode, we have the power. We can able to see the running config. Maybe you just have access to a network device. Now you don't want to format, you don't want to factory reset this network device. As engineers, you need to know the running config. What configuration the previous network engineer have configured within that particular device before you do any changes. You cannot just jump in and start doing changes. No. With this command, you can able to see every configuration done by the previous IT or the previous network engineer for that particular company. With this command, say show, we just show run. We just this short. Or if you tab, you see, if you press the tab key, show running config, what will happen? See something? With this command, we execute up here. This is the command show config. With this command, we execute up here, show config. What happened? Now we can now see current configuration. This is the current configuration in this particular router. See something here. After we enable, our enable password is CCNA. You see, we created a password for this device, which is CCNA, meaning this password is in plain text. We have way to encrypt this password. So when someone even run, someone supposed not someone run this command, he or she supposed not to see or know this command, this password. But as it stands now with enable, the password is not encrypted. But we have some Cisco commands. If you implement it within the router, it will encrypt this command. So you see, this shows you that we are in the running config. See, this is the running configuration running right now within this particular router. We can use packet tracer simulation software. With this packet tracer simulation software, look at it. You have the network devices. Let's say for an example now, we can use this 2911. This is a router. You click on the router. If you click on the router now, you can see, go to the CLI here. Click on the CLI. You see, would you like to enter the initial configuration mode? You say no. I just want to demonstrate this quick for you guys, because I don't want you to use the device that you don't have a network device. That's why you cannot able to implement the same thing we have just done. You can use packet tracer also to implement the same thing. So now here, you see, after dragging this router, I have just clicked what? The router. Look at the steps. Click on the router, go to the CLI. Now you press enter. You see, the first thing the router will show you is router, this greater than sign. You can see it. This is the greater than. With this greater than sign, this also tells you that what? You are in the user mode. So now, let's say you want to move from this user mode. You can use what? Enable. You can shortcut. Use this shortcut and press what? Press the enter key. When you press the enter key, what? It will take you to another mode, which is the privilege exec mode. With this privilege exec mode, what will happen now? You have a lot of, if you use like this command, the caution, shift with the caution key, it will show you all the commands you need to execute within here. Although with Cisco Packet Tracer, some commands we can use some commands in the real iOS, like the network device I'm using. But when you come here, you cannot able to execute some commands within this, because this is just a simulation. But just with this packet tracer, you can able to study and do a lot of lab within this platform and sit your CCNA exam and pass it. You only need to create time. So now, from here, let's say what? We want to create password for this. We can simulate the same thing. We say we move to the config. This we are now using packet tracer. You see? Config T. Now we move from config T to this, so the global configuration. Now you are now in the global configuration. Within this global configuration, we want to create a password for this particular router within the packet tracer platform. We say enable, with enable password. Our password for this, let's say CCMP. Understand? Press enter. So now we have entered, the password is now CCMP. If we exit, we need one more exit. This is the same thing. You see, we have just moved from that global configuration to what? To the user mode. You see, now within this user mode, we want to check for our password. See, beautiful. Now just Cisco, you see, Cisco is now asking us for our password, CCMP. Press enter. We now have access to the GUI, to the config terminals. You see, you can leverage this same packet tracer. You don't need to buy network devices. Just create an account. I will paste a link if you want to create an account. I have a video on this. Now, from here, let's say we want to change the router name. Config. You go to the global config. In global config now, you say host name. Host name, let's say R1. We want this to be R1. You see, now the name have changed from just router to R1. Guys, please leverage Cisco Packet Tracer. Use this Cisco Packet Tracer as for now. If you can't afford to buy the network devices to do physically, I will be using both the network device and Cisco Packet Tracer for you just to have to experience both. For you not to give any excuse. I don't want anyone to give excuse out there, especially when you are in this CCNA Masterclass community. This community is meant for us to communicate, interact, come with your questions, and learn, push each other to learn.